Okay, so we're almost to the end goal now, and I'm getting around to getting a few videos that haven't been done just yet. But it's all end of kind of like um, end of assignment stuff anyway, so it's all good. Retopologizing the body. It's pretty much exactly the same way we think about retopologizing the head. You've got a subject, and you have to figure out what view is giving you the most information, front or side or top. Obviously, for a person, it's going to be the front. So what we're going to do is retopologize his whole entire body, including the head, in one go. Obviously, when you retopologize and stuff, you're going to start off with a mess. So here are my UVs for this body. It's completely a mess. It's not usable whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is just change this. Make sure I'm always saving as well. So I'll get a save going for this. My body. And I'm just going to change to the UV editor just so I can get them both in the same view. Now, normally what I'd do is I'd have the UV window on one monitor and my normal kind of 3D view in the other monitor, just to say to use the space as much as possible. Seeing as I can't do that on video, we'll do it like this. So, we've got it like this. Easy, easy, easy. We just have to take a picture from the very front. So we do our first projection. So we go to UV editing and we go to planar. Making sure that it's obviously facing down the right axis. Just to remind ourselves how we change that, we go to editing, sorry, not editing, UV, and then we go planar and the option box for that. And just have to make sure that it's set to Z if your subject is hopefully facing down the Z axis. And I'm just going to make sure that the keep width height ratio is turned on. And we approach it the exact same way we approach everything. So what I'm going to do first of all is start cutting off all the different kind of elements. So I've got my head and I've got my body. That's two elements there. So my head I can do that exact same way. So I'm going to do is just find a nice place to cut my neck off. I'm going to go here. Maybe a bit low. I'm going to go here. So I'm just going to cut my head off. Boom. So you can UV that the same way we UV the other heads. Now, when it comes to the body, there's no great science to it. There's no difficulty to it. It's literally clothing. If you think about how t-shirts and hoodies and shirts and all this kind of stuff are made, they literally give you the UVs on them. So what I'm going to do is start cutting this body into individual elements. So my torso, my legs, feet, hands, arms. So I'm just going to make sure that symmetry is turned on, obviously. And just find a point. So I'm going to cut my arms off first. So I'm going to find somewhere nicely in the shoulder, around where, the t-shirt would, the t-shirt sleeve would be seamed, connected, sewn. There we go. Let's cut that off. Move that out of the way for now. And I've got my hands off, so I'll find a place fairly close to the wrist. That seems good to me. Obviously, you have to make judgment calls. If you're doing someone where, obviously, you're not going to do the entire body. You're only retopologizing what you see, and you got someone like me who's got the sleeves rolled up a little bit. You could keep all this as one UV and just UV this section, because obviously it's not going to be attached to the body. But for a full nude like this, or where you're going to see the entire arm, I always think cutting off at the hand is good, because if you think of the whole arm is one element and then the hand is another element, rather than if you're only seeing, like, say, that much of an arm, I would consider this all one element. So I'll cut that off. And then we cut the legs off. So we find a nice point near, as close to the groin as possible. So if I've got this that goes around, so this is where it might be a bit difficult, because depending on how you've UV'd your legs in general, this might be very easy, it might be very hard, because ideally I would like a loop going around to the top and going underneath the leg like that. But if you've not got that, what you've got to do is, again, use your best judgment. So let's try and find a nice one, a nice decent one. So I've got a lot of spiraling here. Okay, so this one is going pretty close to where I want it to go. So what I'm going to do on this one is literally just grab those three edges right there. Obviously yours is going to be different. This is where you got to use your, you got to use your logic, and you got to find. You don't want to come too far down the leg to put the UV seam for the leg element, but you also don't want to, have something like that, which doesn't kind of work. So for me, those are so close together that it's just a little like right angle in the UV. It's totally fine. So cut those off. And then for the feet, do the same thing as we did for the wrist. We find a nice loop at the bottom of the ankle, somewhere right around there, let's say, cut, and then boom. So we've broken everything up into the different elements. And now we just approach this the same way we'd approach clothing. Let's do a quick save. So the arms are going to be very easy. We just literally on the underside of the arms find an edge which goes pretty much from the armpit into the wrist. It's a very good place to put a seam as well, because generally you don't see that part of the arm so much, and it's normally down by the sides of the character. So if there's going to be any kind of like texture discrepancies or issues with the materials, they're going to be more hidden. You don't want to put seams on exposed areas unless you get told to, but generally you don't do that. So I'm going to find an edge. So how's that one looking? That one's a little bit too much in. So I'm using my UV here to actually grab the edge. That seems pretty good. So that's going all the way down there. Just make sure it goes all the way to the end of the wrist, like that. And then cut. There we go. And then do the same things for the legs. Find a nice edge that runs down the inside of the leg. Make sure it goes all the way up to the top, which it does. Make sure it goes all the way to the bottom, which it does. Cool. So I can treat these as two basically done UVs for now. Notice as well I'm saving a lot. Historically, when you're UVing and you're moving UVs around, there is sometimes, very rarely, but it does annoyingly happen, where the software will crash. I don't understand why. Now that's not really been a thing for a good few versions, but just to be safe, just always control. You don't even need to do incremental saves on this. Just Control S whenever you're doing stuff in UVs, just to be safe. Right. So this is going to be dead easy. So we select these, modify, unfold, make sure it's 3D unfold, boom. Arms are done. Do same things for the legs. Boom, legs are done. Awesome. So they're actually already done. We can rectangle these off if we want to, but for now what I'm going to do is just keep them to the side, kind of organize them so they're a bit straighter. Like that. Okay, so that's the arms and legs done. Very, very easy. And if you see fashion patterns when they're unfolded, they don't look too dissimilar to this as well. So let's do the body. Let's do the torso. There's a couple of different ways we can do this. And I'm leaving my hands and feet to last because they're the most finicky ones. So I like to get all the easy stuff out of the way first. So the body can be done in two different ways. You can either split it off from all the way down the sides, like you would do a t-shirt. Like a t-shirt has the seams going down the sides. Now this I'm going to try and, I'm going to find the same edge which lines up with my armpit. Oh, symmetry's turned off for some reason. Oh, because I've turned it off for moving stuff. There we go. There we go. So now we have the front and the back. Oh, the shoulders. I always forget that. So the shoulders. We need to cut across the top of the shoulders as well. Boom. There we go. So now we have top and a bottom. Oh, underneath the gusset. Right. Yeah. We need to go inside here as well. There you go. So now you got front and back. The only thing you need to do here is obviously flip the back because that's red because it's facing away from that camera. So let's go to modify flip. All good. And then when we unfold, we'll have this. So that's one way of doing the torso. Very simple. This is really good if you're doing clothing, because obviously you can use the seam of the clothing as a text, especially if you've retopologized across that seam and it's still maintained. You can literally use the seam in the clothing as a seam in the UV, so that you can actually play and get some really nice texture information there because you've literally got a physical break. It's also perfectly fine to do for the nude bodies. My only problem is, again, this is a bit of an old school way of thinking, is you might have texture discrepancies across there. You might have some sort of obvious seam going across the side there. Now, we're using Painter. That is pretty much negated these days. But I'm talking about when I started working, it was only Photoshop. and you'd have to be really careful about seams across there because it's very hard to match up polygons when you're not painted directly onto the surface. So that's one way of doing it, and that's perfectly fine. The other way of doing it is you start from the exact same position, and it's a lot of the same kind of thinking, except what I'm going to do is put one going down the spine. So we go from the top of the neck down to the middle of the gusset, around there. Cut that, and then across that line we've just cut there where it ends, I'm going to cut across the bottom there, like that. And then the top of the shoulders, which are already done. And then when we unfold this, oh, they're still, oops a daisy, I've not gone back far enough, so pretend that these are still sewn together. So now what I can do is, what else to say? Unfold like that. So we have that. Now what that does is it limits the amount of obvious seams in places where you probably, you can hide them through normal texturing. So you're not going to have any down the sides of the body there. You're only going to have one going down the spine, and obviously across the top of the shoulders. So those are two completely different ways. Look, so completely, totally fine ways of doing stuff. Either way, totally fine. I guess the big factor is how you're able to actually get them into the UV space. Is this more efficient for you, or is the other way more efficient for you? Just in this case, I'm going to do the method I did at the beginning. Let's make sure I've got all my seams. Go across the gusset. So it doesn't take too long at all to do this kind of stuff. Unfold. There you go. And then just flip this one. Unfold. Cool. So both are perfectly fine to do. I'm just choosing to do this one. Now, hands and feet. So we'll do the hands first, and we'll leave the feet to last. The reason why I'm leaving these to last is because, again, these can often be quite easy or quite difficult depending on how the retopology has been done. For naked hands anyway. For gloved hands, it's a lot easier because you can literally treat the glove section and the finger section as two separate things. But there's another couple of different ways we can do this as well. There's one way where everything's maintained the same within the same kind of like UV island, but it's very kind of like deformed. And then there's another way where you actually have separate UV islands for stuff, but it's all a lot more organized. And again, it's completely up to you how you want to do it. So, let's do the one UV island, but the messier layout one. So what I'm going to do is literally just cut the hand in half, going through the middle as best I can. So it does need me actually having to look for a center line going through my hand. Go through. Okay, so a bit tricky, but going around like that, going around, and this just goes to the end of the hand, like this. Okay. Hands are always going to be a bit funny to do because it's very hard to maintain like the perfect hand topology. You have to spend ages on it. But it is a point of pride when you are able to actually get that perfect hand retopo that allows you to get like this perfect UV split. It is a bit of like, ooh, did it, but it is also hard. So what I'm going to do is make a little bit of a jump in this case, because if I keep going in this direction, obviously I'm going to hit this. So where do I go from here? I've got like a little T-junction to go. I'm going to go up and around into the thumb like this, because I want to cut the thumb as much as I can. I want to cut the thumb in half. As much as I can, like I said. And here I'm going to do a bit of a jump because this is going into the bottom of the hand now. I don't really want to go there, so I'm going to go up and make sure I go into the side of the wrist like this. So now, what I should have, do a quick save, is a top and a bottom of the hand. There we go. So let's do a save again. And all I'm going to do is just unfold those as they are. Now you could leave the hands like this. You can kind of see what's happening with the lower hand there, the bottom of the hand. It's getting very, very weird. You could leave the hands like this. Obviously, it's a little bit awkward to actually place inside the UV sheet. And these kind of like very broken finger looking geezers is because of how I need to make those cuts in the hand. Like the little jumps here and the little cross section here. That's what's causing that. So I guess technically there is 3 different ways of doing it, but I would never leave the hands like this personally, because what I can do is I can sew across the outside of the hand there. I'm going to sew that from the tip of the finger down to wherever I ended that UV space. I'm going to sew that together. That's because whenever you're talking to someone and people are gesturing in games or whatever, or when they're fighting, you're generally looking at that part of the hand. You never really talk to anyone and you can see the inside of that, can you? So it's all that bit. Also, like, that's a smaller area, so if there are going to be any seams and stuff, it's going to be a much smaller area rather than that, which is a big open area. Did it run? There we go. And then sew that together, and then unfold that, and see what it gives me. There we go. So you got something like that. It's totally fine. Obviously, the UVs are a bit funky. When we're doing organic objects, especially when it comes to hands or anything that's, you know, tendrily like that, you're always going to have very strange UVs, like very, very amorphous, shapeless UVs. Unless it's like, if it's like a tentacle or something where it's a completely straight object, even though it is curly, you can technically turn that into a nice big straight box, because it's only one thing. It's just a long tube that just happens to bend. Hands, though, well, you've got all these different components. It's all like different angles and, you know, whatever, that it can sometimes, like we see here, be a bit funky. But then again, I can lay those out in the UV sheet. I can whatever. So that's one way of doing it. And that's the way I generally try and do my stuff. The other way, if we go all the way back to before I did the cuts, it takes a bit of time. I think I've run out of, you know, I'm just gonna project the hands on their own again. There we go. Turn these off so I can move them closer together. And as you see, I've reprojected the hands on their own. That's totally fine to do, because we're going to be doing the whole textile density thing on this NH frame to make sure everything is, you know, the right size. So it's totally fine if, you know, these are a bit bigger at first. Reproject stuff, it doesn't matter. UVing it takes no time at all. So the other way of doing stuff is where I actually cut off the fingers as close to the palm as possible. Oops, here we go. So cut the fingers off. Like that. There we go. Oh, thumb as well. Ooh, can't forget the thumb. Have we got a nice loop going around the thumb? We've got a nice loop going around the thumb. There we go. Boom. So cut each one of those off. I've just realised I've done it on one face, so it's a bit annoying, but okay. Right, we'll just be clean and do both at the same time. So I'm just going to go reselect these. So I've got them on both hands, so you can see the results. Obviously, it goes without saying, when you're doing something symmetrical like this, there we go, you want to have symmetry turned on. Cool, so now what we've got is this section, and we've got the fingers. So what we're doing here is almost treating like a fingerless glove section, and then the actual fingers themselves, and we're going to have more regular unfolds, but they're going to have more UVs to deal with. It can actually help with organising, because your fingers are all going to be separate, that you can actually organise them. You know, you stack them, you can Tetris them a little bit more. Right, so on this one, cut. What I'm going to do is, again, cut on the inside. I'm going to leave this outside section alone. I'm going to cut on the inside here. I'm going to cut on the inside, let's say about there. And when I unfold that, oh, sorry, cut in between the fingers as well. Oops. So find the center of each finger. This essentially is the same principle as when we did the shoulders on the body. There we go. So now I got these kind of unfolds. And then for the for the fingers and stuff, what I'm going to do is, again, depending on how you've projected these and the amount of edges going round, what I'm going to do is find an edge at the underside. Because again, unless you're doing this to someone, you don't generally look at the palm of someone's hand. Obviously, if you're doing a game where you'll have, I don't know, your inventory system is what's in your hand, for instance. So every time you press triangle, for instance, you look at your hand. That hand is a really, really important part of the game. So you treat that a bit differently because you're staring at that point, so you kind of want to steer away from having UV seams there. But if we're just talking about communal garden NPCs kind of stuff, yeah, let's put them on the fans there. So I go up to at some point like there, and I'll come. Basically, what I'm doing is cutting off a little flap. I'll try and explain in a second. So I've cut that there. So I've gone from where I can get it, the underside of the finger in the middle, to the top. So now these two sides here are going to unfold. But then obviously it's all connected to the tip here. So what I've done is just created like a little flap of skin around there. So that'll fold out and lay flat. So just move some stuff out of the way, grab that, here we go. So now if we unfold that, there we go. So now you can see it's a lot more regular, it's a lot less distorted. The only problem is now that we've got a texture seam in the knuckle area. And because I've got two fingers that are similar, what I'm going to do is copy the same. I'm going to do the same kind of thing. So I'm going to find that edge there, go up to the top, and then cut around. Now do this. So where have we got an underside? Nope. So I'm going to do the same thing here. Bring that up to there. Like that. And then we got the same thing here. Okay, pretty much the same thing here. So yeah, I'm going to do the same thing to try and keep it all so I don't have wildly different UV unfolds. I'll do the same thing on this one. It's not perfectly in the middle, but that's fine. We've got the same amount of edges and stuff. It's got the same kind of anatomy. The retopology. Now this one I can actually go directly up the middle, which is fun. So I think it's this edge. Yeah, that one. So go up to there, and then we go around. There we go. And I can just unfold all them. Nice, good. Oh, you are. Have I overcut a finger? I appear to have overcut a finger. Oops. Okay, so that's cool. So I've accidentally buggered up a finger there. All I have to do in this one is just sew the offending edges back together. I don't have to reproject anything. I just grab the edges that I didn't want to cut, that I've somehow selected. Sew those back together. Hit it with an unfold again, just to make sure everything's... There we go, boom. So now if I turn off Object X, there we go. So now what I've got is all my fingers, and I like to arrange these in like order. So let's... and this, and then this, and then this. You know, keep like for like, family for family. And this, and then this, and this, hands. At least, so I can organize them, I can rotate them, and make them more straight and stuff. But then that's the second way you can do the hands. Again, both are totally fine to do. I like having everything as one big island because it mitigates any kind of, or as much UV seams as possible. Because all the seams are going to be in places where you're not going to really see them too much, in between the fingers or in this kind of area here. But doing like this, again, perfectly fine. You've just got to make sure that obviously your textile density is correct between all your different islands. So you don't have like weird discrepancies between quality between fingers and palm. And yeah, because we're actually painting directly onto the surface, it mitigates a lot of the issues when it comes to like, having obvious texture seams or whatever. So feet. So in this example, we've actually got toes on this geezer, but we approach this the same way we approach the hands. I'm going to cut the bottom of the foot off, and then I'm going to cut down the sides, down the back, basically down the Achilles tendon, and then unfold from there. As well as, I could just do it like that. See what it gives me. So let's try and find an edge. Do we have an edge which runs around all the way? No. Okay, cool. So, what I've got to do is find the best edges. Obviously, you won't be having toes on yours. So all I would do for this is cut the bottom of the foot off, like almost like the what do you call it, the footprint section. Cut that bit off there. That's literally like your palm of your hand. And then with everything that's left, what you can do is literally just cut down the Achilles tendon from back here to wherever the texture seam is. Unfold that and you'll have something really nice. So in fact, what I'm going to do is make a foot that is going to be not too dissimilar to something that you've got. So I'm going to pause the video while I do this as well, actually, so I'm not going to spend ages. There we go. So your foot's probably going to look something like this after UV, and obviously you've got any kind of sculpted toe data or anything like that. So something like this, what I'm looking for is the underside, the base of the foot, the footprint. I'm going to just cut that off. Nope. First of all, I need to project it. So I'm just going to project it from the front. There we go. Because it's going to be part of that kind of foot area anyway. So just to get it away for now, I'm going to find what I think would be like the footprint of the foot. Cut that away. So you might have something like in what I have in my hand, where maybe it's a little bit jagged, so you got to kind of go up and down a little bit, or maybe it's not going to be as perfect and neat as that. But all you're looking for generally is the bottom of the foot, the footprint itself, and that's there. So with this, obviously, this isn't in the best kind of like angle. All I'm going to do is hit this with an automatic unwrap, boom, like that. Because what that's going to do, obviously, because it's flat, it's facing pretty much down the y-axis. So if I just do an automatic unwrap, it just lets it out flat, and we're all good. Again, I can scale and size that up to what I want later on. So with that left, what I can do is literally just cut down the Achilles tendon. I'm actually going to delete some of this, because really, this is the only section of the foot. So anything above this would be the leg. That would be part of the leg UV that we've already done. Here, all I've got to do is find the very back of the foot, basically the Achilles tendon, cut that, and then unfold that, and you'll get a shape like this. Perfect. That's all you need to do. Again, I made that out of a cube, and it's all very regular and perfect. But your foot will look not too dissimilar to that. You'll have something similar to it. So all you got to do again is just find the footprint section, just cut that bit off, and then whatever's left should just be able to cut down the Achilles tendon, unfold, and you'll have something which looks kind of like that. So with everything UV'd there, we've got something that looks like this. Obviously, we've got our head UV that we've been looking at, so it's nice and squared off. And then I've arranged my body parts like this. If you choose to go down the realm of 3D character art, and obviously this is all part of it, there's things that we've not been doing which need to be considered for the more kind of like advanced professional kind of outfacing stuff. Big one is textile density. Currently, my body is very untextile density. So I've got my head size there, which is 6.67. So if I apply that to everything else, you're going to see that obviously it breaks our UV spacing. And then with our body here, which is 1.9. So it's not even half the size of it. But for this, that's totally fine. The main thing we've got to do for this is make sure that our texture for our head is essentially double the size of our texture for our body. So for instance, if I do a 2K texture for the head, for the body, so to say, if I texture these as 2K, or at least my output is 2K anyway. My output for these is 2K. My output for my head is going to be 1K. Because this takes up, let's say this takes up twice the amount of size. It's twice as big as my body elements. So it means half the pixels because it's taken up twice the size. It's a little bit of a weird one to get your head around. If we have both of these being 2K, what you're going to see is you're going to have all really nice detail on your face, all the pore detail, whatever. And then when it comes to the head, you'll literally see that line break there where we separate the UVs. You'll see this very kind of shift in quality. Now we're going to get blurry. It's going to get a little bit more low res around the body. But if you essentially double the size, if this is going to be a 1K head, if we double the size of these, it means that it's getting close to that kind of pixel density. So don't get confused though. Don't make your head twice the size of your body, because it means that the head is now quadruple density compared to your body. So the body section should always be twice the pixels, twice the texture size, or one texture size up, I should say. One texture size up from the head. So for instance, if this is 1K, if I texture my head as 1K, my body will be 2K. If I texture my head at 2K, my body will be 4K. That's only when we actually output our textures. We can say, right, the head is going to be a 2K texture, the body is going to be a 4K texture. And that's it. So that's our layout there. Now exporting this, taking it into ZBrush and all that kind of jazz, is really simple. So now we're going to throw it back into ZBrush. So I've got my FBX exported, and I've got just some noise on the surface, just so we can see it getting pulled through. Pardon me, sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. So just remind ourselves, whenever we import anything, we have to go to Z plugin, FBX import export, import it, and then we find our model. Nope, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one. There we go. There we go. Now it looks like it's deleted our model and replaced it and all that kind of stuff. It hasn't. So remember that up here in the top right here, this is where essentially in Photoshop, if you have multiple documents open, these are all the different tabs. It's essentially that. So one of these is going to be our main one. So that's our main body. Annoyingly, they're all called ZBrush, male ZBrush. But this is the one I'm looking at because this is my one with just a bit of noise on it. So what I'm going to do now is insert, and then this male ZBrush on the very end here. This is going to be your last imported object. So I can import that, and boom, there you go. And we just go through the whole process. So I'm going to save this because I love when software's crashing me. So male body, male body. Boom, there you go. And we just go through the exact same process. We do the whole projection thing. So we making sure that if you got multiple things in here, so if you're doing your likeness or whatever, just make sure everything is invisible except for the things you want to pull off. So then projection, add a subdivision, projection. At this point, I like just isolating or soloing off my model so I can see it all coming through. It's a good little thing to witness. Obviously, it's going to take a little bit longer each projection. So we'll do one more just because I don't want to be here all day. But obviously you'd go up to about 6 or 7 subdivisions to get the really nice high dense mesh to get any kind of detailing you want to get in there. Which still also does give us the opportunity to go back down to a lower subdivision level, make some arrangements, go up to the high subdivision level, add detail. So I'll actually do what division are we on now? We're on 5. So I'll add one more. I'll add 6, and then I'll just project that. And then I'll add a little bit of detail that actually isn't on the mesh at the minute. Because I've added this little bit of a noise, but I'm going to add a little bit of something to the face. So I can then pull that information off and see how it works. Oh, just to remind ourselves again while that's doing its thing, make sure that none of your UVs are actually touching the sides of the UV island, the UV space. Make sure there's a little bit of a gap. So none of my UVs should be touching the edges. Now this is why we do tests as well. Still working. This is why we do tests as well. So we'll reproject at a low resolution, or not reproject. Sorry, we'll bake out our multi-map exports to get our normal map at a low resolution. See if it works. If it works, totally cool. We can go and do our final high resolution pass. If it doesn't, that means we need to go back into Maya, just make some arrangements and I'll make some adjustments, and bring it back in. And it'd be horrible if you did that all that as 4K and only to find out it didn't work, and then have to go through the whole process again. So. But I've done a little bit of something there. That's cool. And then I'm just going to do this, and then do this, and then do this. And I'm just going to add a little bit of, let's call it skin pores on his face. Someone's pipping her on outside. And maybe a bit of smoothing. Some add a bit of detail. I've got a bit of detail. It's beautiful, professional. And now on my, so you know, we've spent time, we've detailed, we've done all that kind of stuff. We've gone down to the lowest subdivision level to, you know, move stuff around, to shape stuff. You know, to, you know, maybe we want to come in here and move the jaw down a little bit, rearrange that, maybe pull in the jaw a little bit more like this. Nothing that's going to destroy the silhouette, but now what we can do is we've done, like I said, we've done all our stuff. We've made all our adjustments. We're checking that all our subdivision levels are good, which they are. Just multi-map export now. And I'm crossing my fingers because sometimes this doesn't want to work and I don't know why. But if we go to multi-map export again, just make sure normal selected, and inside our export options, normal map, we just need to make sure that tangent, adaptive, S-normal, and flip G are selected. Because tangent is the type of normal map we're making. Adaptive will just give you a better result. S-normals will smooth the normals, give you, again, just help stuff work. And flip G is, because the whole normal map system works on the RGB scale, and it's literally colours on a colour wheel. So some normal maps, there's OpenGL and there's DirectX. One has the green channel at the top and one has a green channel at the bottom. So if we do flip G, it's going to work perfectly fine inside Painter straight away and in Unreal. And when I'm done that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that as 1K. I'm going to create all maps, and I'm just going to tell it to put itself somewhere. So I'm going to, in here, make a new folder called body norms. And I'm just going to body. Whatever, it's called body. And it's going to go through its thing. I've done it at a low resolution, so it should go through quite fast. Just checking again. So I'm trying to find that folder. So I've got my folder open here on the sides. Hopefully the video isn't glitching out. And I should see 2 materials pop up in a second. Takes a bit of time. So it's processing the second map now, but I've just had the head come through, and the head looks fine to me, and that's all good. So now it's doing 2 of them because it's got 2 UDIMs, it's got 2 UV sets attached to the same object, so it's doing like 1 UDIM set, and then it's going to do the next UDIM set here. So yeah, it's going to take a bit of time. It's the adaptive that makes it take the longest time. And this is at 1K, so if you imagine doing that as 4K, waiting for ages, and then you end up getting a broken normal, where you get shards going across it, that's going to be disappointing, because you might end up waiting like half an hour, which sucks. And my body's come through. So both my head and my body are here. So my head's there, we've looked at that, and then my body's here, we've looked at that. Cool. So now I've got 2 perfectly good normal maps. So I know they're going to work. So what I'm going to do now is run the proper high resolution. I might even push that as an 8K, which will take a while to go through. And that's when I'm going to leave the computer alone and let it do its thing. But now that I know that that's going to work, what I can do is literally go through the exact same process. Yes, all maps are created. Go through the exact same process again, just at a higher resolution. So I'm going to drag this. I'll do it 4K, just to kind of save myself, because it might take like 20 minutes. Obviously, this is all dependent on your computer. If you have a lower power computer, it will take a little bit longer. And it might even fail on low power computers, because ZBrush does have a tendency to, if it hits like a brick wall, it hits like a ceiling of power, it tends to just stop the process or hang and not complete it. So if you are having that trouble, just do it in school. So if we go create all maps now, and I'm going to save it here, that's all good, and I'll come back in a bit. And that is us done. We have our normal maps created at 4K. It's looking nice. Obviously, again, these aren't the normal maps that we're going to use on the end product. These are what we're going to take into Substance Painter to help us, create our generators, work as like a base for our normals. And if we add anything, take anything away, do anything like that, we have them there. So, pardon me. I'm just going to make doubly check that I'm okay for Painter. So I'm going to go back to my model, because this is the one we're actually going to use. We exported that. I'm just going to check that it's actually all good. No kind of faceting, hard edges, anything like that. Everything's nice and smooth. Cool. We don't actually need to export anything from ZBrush, because we're only using that process to create our normal maps. So it is a bit of a multi-step, like multi-pathing. Our main path is when we retopologizing with UV. Technically, that's the one we're going to. Well, not technically. That is the one we're going to take into Painter. From there, we take a little bit of a detour to ZBrush to create our normal maps, but then we come back. Right. So let me bounce up Painter. Please make sure that we're using the same Painter version that we are doing in the school as well. The best thing to do is just find out what version we're on at school. I think we're on 1.11. I think. And then just turn off on your on your Adobe Cloud, just turn off automatic updating, and then only push and update when we update. It's just because sometimes some of these files, you really don't like working with each other on different versions. Pardon me, I'm very sorry. So new, big one for us, we need to make sure we're ticking this use tile UV tile workflow, preserve UV tile layout per material, and enable painting across tiles. This is really important for when we're dealing with anything where we're having multiple UVs or multiple UDIMs, because if we don't have that turned on, we just basically have the head and not the body. And whatever we texture on the head gets put onto the body. Even though technically the UVs for the head are there, they're not being read as a separate UDIM, a separate kind of like area to texture. With this use to UV tile workflow ticked, it will recognize it as a separate UV flow, and then texture on top of it. So if I go in and find my body, I believe it's that one. Give it a minute. There we go. So now you might notice that the actual 2D section is a bit different. Now we're seeing this grid. This is the UV tile setup, and within reason, you can use as many of these UVs, these UDIMs as possible. This is a UDIM, to remind ourselves. This area here is called a UDIM, and this is a UDIM. So as you can see underneath as well, this is 0.001001 UDIM. This is 1002 UDIM. This one would be 2001 UDIM. This would be 2002 UDIM. Numbers. But now what we can do is texture on the body and texture on the head, and we can also paint across the seams. So it means that we're not going to have obvious separation between each UDIM area. What you can also do is up in your texture set list, you can change the different resolution per UDIM here. So my UDIM 2, let's say I want that to be 2K. And my UDIM 1, I want that to be 1K. That means again that we're getting that kind of, we're trying to get the same kind of detailing across both sides. So now this normal map that we've just made, we need to bring it in. However, we don't necessarily choose what space goes in where and all that kind of jazz. So if we just do the normal way we bring in UV, so I brought in both my normal map, not my UV, sorry, my normal maps. I brought in both normal maps here, so I've imported them the same way. So file, import resources, I brought them both in. But on my body, so on my Lambert, you can ignore this UV tile section here for this. On my Lambert 2, or whatever my I'm going to call my body, so let's actually call it body, be good housekeeping. My body there, where I have my mesh maps here in my text set list, we can only really choose one, and it only places it on the head. So nothing's actually happening to our body. That's because we need to name our files correctly. We need to name our files correctly. So let's go and name our files. So what we need to do is name our files. So I've got my norm maps here, and we have these UDIM coordinates here, which are actually going to tell us what to do. So we have 1001, and then we have 1002. All I need to do here is rename these files to kind of reflect that. So what I'm going to do is call this full body normal point 112, like that. So full body normal 112. This is our head. Yes, this is our head. So whatever there's going to be in the head UDIM space is going to be that one. So this is my head. Now here, for my body, I'm going to call it the exact same thing, but I'm going to have 1002 at the end of it. So that should tell both of these that they're going to be in the 1001 or 1002 space. So what I'm going to do is re-import these, and I should, if I've done my job right, again, cross fingers, what I'm going to do is bring them both in, call them texture, and if I do this right, I might regret this. There we go, perfect. So I brought them both in. I've named them full body dot 001 or 002. Well, 1001, 1002. I always get that wrong for some reason. And I know I've done it right because now our normal app has a 2 on it. That says that I have 2 UDIM spaces being taken up. So if I click that, now the normals are going across both UVs like that. So you can see a little 2 there means that I'm using up 2 UDIM spaces. So if you had like 10 going across like that, that would say 10. And you'd have like 1001 up to 1010. A bit confusing, but write down the process. That's what, when I first did this, and every time I do it, I always have to be like, oh god, have I done it right? You just name the file. It has to be the exact same name, obviously. So full body normal, so it's an all norm map, and then dot, and then its position in the UV. 1001, 1002. And if you've named them right, then the head should be in the head area, and the body should be in the body area. If you get them wrong, all you do is flip the numbers. So if I've accidentally put my head normal as 1002, all I've got to do is change it to 1001, and then my body to 1002. And then from there, we can just start going at it, and texturing and stuff. Easy, 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 easy. So that's taking a full body UV, reprojecting obviously, and then getting into Painter to start painting. So we go about the painting the exact same way we paint in the head. All you've got to really think about here is the areas of wear, areas of reddening. If you want to have like craggy skin on the elbows, freckles on the arms or the upper chest, you want to have reddening on the inside of the thighs, under the armpits. If I'm doing a Caucasian character, I always like to make the fingers a little bit redder, like a little bit of a gradient of red. But if you do a darker skin character, then you got to look at what is what are cool elements of their texture. Maybe they have, where we might have reddening, they might have darkening. If anything, it goes to a deeper shade of brown or something. Or maybe they've got, if you're going quite a dark skin tone, maybe they've got more yellowing of the palms of the hand, yellowing on the knees and the elbows, top of the shoulders, maybe that kind of thing. You can put in like little blemishes. If you look at what's going on in people's bodies, you might have like little spots or whatever. As long as it serves the subject and is an appropriate texture, we're all good. Well, there you go. See you in the next one.